Right, today we are at Charmouth. Beautiful spring day, nearly the end of March, and we've been to Charmouth several times before. We're going east this time. So we're going underneath the cliffs here, or on the foreshore in front of Stonebarrow. We've gone that way before a few times, and that's really good for sea glass actually as you go towards Lyme Regis, but today the objective is, of course, fossils. Got the lucky shirt on. I think we might have been here once before in a video. Didn't turn up much, but we'll have another go today, I think. So here's the fossil code, in case you're worried or wondering about that. Things about cliff falls, I think we've probably stressed that in enough videos just recently. Information for dog owners about where we can take dogs and where we can't take dogs. Mainly just not on the beach that way, but we're okay, dog friendly on the bit we're going. So here we are, a bit of sand, lots of rocks, people already walking along the foreshore there, fossil hunting. Quite a lot of people fossil hunting on the beach, but that's where we're going. So we're here on the falling tide, as usual, because obviously we don't want to get trapped between the water and the cliffs, but also this gives us the opportunity to explore the foreshore as it's revealed, which hopefully gives us the greatest chance of perhaps finding an interesting fossil that's just been tumbled up out of the sediments. We shall see. Beautiful day to be out here on the beach. There have been quite a few major cliff falls in these cliffs just recently, so there is everything to play for with regard to fossils. We might go as far as the end of that headland. I think that might be Golden Cap up there actually, so round the corner there is Seatown. So here's the first find, a very worn, almost unrecognizable piece of ammonite, but that definitely is. You can tell just from the periodicity of the ridges. So that's the first find of the day. Not worth taking home. Well, it's quite a wind picked up now. So yeah, there's been recent cliff falls, and we're not going to go clambering over all of that lot. Some people do, and they find some interesting stuff up there, but my risk appetite does not stretch to that kind of endangerment. Interestingly, the West Bay video that I did recently, and I showed a recent cliff fall in front of the West Bay cliffs, and it turns out that that particular cliff fall nearly took someone's life. There was a chap who collects fossils up on West Bay on top of the cliff fall that had already come down, so in theory should be comparatively safe, and a rock the size of a fridge came down and landed literally right next to him, a metre or so to the side, and he'd have been a goner. So yeah, I think I've emphasised the risks of these cliffs a bit more than is perhaps strictly necessary. I think people underestimate the risks of these cliffs in general, so I guess I'm compensating for that. One thing people often neglect when they're talking about risk is they say, oh well, that's not very likely. and they neglect to consider the severity of the risk. So in sort of general risk management, you should always think about the likelihood of the risk. Is it very likely to happen? And the severity of the risk. That is, how bad would it be if it did happen? And really, the response to the risk is a kind of is a combination of those two factors. Anyway, on with the fossil hunt. I want to get a bit further along to those rocks there, I think. Oh, there is quite a breeze blown up. So, second find of the day. Just a little fragment of ammonite there. Not particularly recognisable. Well, you can see the ridges on it. There's also a little piece of belemnite here. A little bit of tumbled belemnite. Not taking those home. I've got better pieces than that in my collection already, but we'll keep looking. So we may have a look in some of these bits of the cliff that have fallen down, but I'm not going underneath any bits that are really tall and overhanging. But some of the bits that have slumped down already are probably worth having a look in, although I don't suppose we'll be the first to explore them. But fresh set of eyes sometimes finds interesting things. I'm just going to have a look amongst the rocks in these ledges here, because this is where, well, I found stuff here before. I'm seeing more and more pyrite nodules, so that is a hopeful sign for other things. So what we'll do is we'll have a look around about these boulders. So just have a look in amongst all of these big boulders, because you get little sheltered spots around them where things get weathered out and then collect. I haven't seen anything really to talk about yet. So here next to this rock is a piece of something. I think that's the bottom end of a belemnite, so that's the flared tentacle end of a belemnite. Is that little ammonite there? No. Well, it might have been. There's quite a lot more pyrite in these gravels here, so this is where we might find some pyritized ammonites if we're lucky. Although, bearing in mind this beach has been picked over rather extensively. If you see anything that I missed or didn't talk about, let me know in the comments. Timestamp is useful if you do that. There's another piece of tumbled belemnite there, and another bit. Oh, Jenny's found something. So these are the big sort of shale beds that are in situ here. So I can't see because your shadow's on it. There. Yeah, and just step out there. That's it. Yeah, a couple of ammonites there in situ in the matrix still. See, there's a pyrite nodule there that's in the process of weathering out. And you can see that's what I mean by weathering, is these rocks just crumble apart as the waves smash into them, and any fossils that are more durable than the matrix that they're embedded in will persist for a little while on the beach, just waiting for us to come along and pick them up. Haven't seen anything really worth talking about yet though. Gosh, that wind is something else. I lost my hat a minute ago, just blew off and galloped off down the beach. Yeah, I'm staying off of this shale, it's really slippy. So if we can, we'll get as far as that cliff there. I think that is Golden Cap. So we'll get as far as that and then come back. Yeah.
It's literally, you have to really look.
Yes. I'm not sure what that is. Just going to stop for a moment and appreciate the texture of this rock here. This is a piece of shale and it's breaking up into fragments. It's weathering away, cracking into little polygonal sections. Isn't it pretty? But we didn't come here to gawp at rocks. Well, not entirely anyway. So we will keep on searching. Oh, Jenny's found something. Jenny's picked something up. That's a hopeful sign. What you got?
Very delicate.
Oh gosh, yeah, look at that.
It's all in
So,
there.
really delicate piece of very slender belemnite. So there's the flared end there. It came out in two pieces just because, well,
yeah,
you can see, yeah, it's just breaking up into fragments. There's a piece of it down there. So yeah, probably too delicate to take home, that one, I would say, unless you want to.
No, I think it's all in that rock.
Yes.
Actually, because you can see bits of it.
Yeah, in fact, that looks something. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of the fossils here, if you just go and dig them out the cliffs, they will be too fragile, too delicate to survive. So that's one of the reasons I always hunt for fossils here on the foreshore, because anything that's down here should have been durable enough that it's going to last when we take it home. Very interesting rocks here. Bits of various mudstones and things with boring piddocks in them. In fact, we get to see, there we go, there's the shells of the boring piddock. It's a bivalve mollusk that bores into these soft rocks. In fact, the shell of the mollusk itself is really quite thin and fragile, and it's a bit of a paradox really how they manage to burrow into the rocks with such a delicate shell. I suppose the delicate shell is because their protection comes from the rock that they burrow into. Well, so much for the lucky dinosaur shirt. I haven't found a really single decent fossil so far today. Potentially interesting bit of lime bay agate there. Don't know if that would tumble well. So this is a notionally promising spot here. So we've got iron pyrite nodules. You can see how that's iron pyrite, fool's gold. And that's the mineral that is often what forms some of the better fossils here. It's like it infills the fossil. You get this golden ammonites, or fool's gold ammonites. So this is a promising little spot here because there's a fair bit of that on the beach here. Just give it a bit more of a closer look. No, okay, we'll keep going. Jenny's off over among the boulders. I'm going to stay up here. Gosh, that wind is just relentless today. Fortunately, the jacket I'm wearing is quite windproof. Yeah, you can see how the clouds are actually moving quite fast. Which does mean the weather could change at any moment. because fresh weather just blows over really quickly. Right, here's another promising spot where various different aggregates and things have washed out. Not seeing anything though. Right, yeah, this is where I'm going to look in amongst all of these boulders and pebbles and see what I can find in here. It's a bit too treacherous walking on this actually. It's a recipe for broken ankles. I think we'll go back on the beach. Well, there might be an ammonite in the middle of that. That's a kind of pyrite concretion or something. It does have a little bit of an ammonite shape to it, but it looks like the pyrite crystal growth has kind of obscured it a bit, so I don't think we'll be taking that one. But yeah, I think you can see there's a probable spiral shape there. We're far enough along the beach now that we're getting to the bit where not many people have come since the last high tide, so this is the part where we might be a bit more lucky. So there's a bit of tumbled belemnite. Yeah, this is the bit we're hopefully going to see that is not quite so picked over, at least since the last high tide. So anything that might have been buried under the gravel, and then the gravel's all churned up by the waves as the tide comes in, and then as the tide recedes you've got a fresh collection of things on the surface. There's a rather interesting bit of lime bait agate that's got some lines in it. Now Eva's going to have that. Okay. I did see out the corner of my eye something with ridges on it, and now I've lost it. No, it's gone. Okay, well there is a definite piece of ammonite in pyrite. I think we might take that one home. Not a particularly interesting specimen, but it's the best we've found so far today. Well, the sun's coming out again. There's still a stiff breeze. Water running down the cliff face there from a little spring, but you can see some of these cliffs here. This piece here is going to come down soon. Just, you can kind of figure it out from how steep the cliffs are, and actually how much or little there is of fallen cliff at the bottom of them, because the tide goes right up to the cliff's face and bashes against it and washes it away and undercuts it, and then eventually, well, these rocks don't have a lot of physical integrity, so they just crumble apart and fall down. And these are the cliffs, the fossils are in these cliffs. So these stones, this sedimentary rock here composing these cliffs, contains lots and lots of fossils. So this is the source of all the fossils that end up on the beach. But yeah, look at that bit up there is just overhanging, so that will not be long before that comes down. So, you know, probably not today. Again, severity versus probability. Not very likely to happen right now, but severity, if you're standing underneath that when it happens, that will kind of spoil your day. First little piece of sea glass there from a green beer bottle, probably Heineken, most likely. Actually not a lot of waste or sea glass or litter on the beach. That's always a good thing to see. So this bit of mudslide here, I feel fairly safe going over to here because there's not a massive cliff towering over it. So we're going to have a look in the mud that's slumped out of here. See if there's anything interesting poking out the mud, because people do find large intact ammonites in this lot. Oh, here's a sharp egg case, well, from a ray, thornback ray maybe, I don't know, but yeah, from a ray of some sort, also known as a mermaid's purse, but it's the egg case empty of a species of ray or shark. So yeah, this is the stuff that's come down, and it's a kind of combination of this sedimentary rock and muddy clay. That's interesting. There's a fossil in situ there. I wonder what that is. But yeah, there's a boulder here about the size of the car I drive. You can imagine if that came down on top of you, it would, well, change your plans for the day, let's put it that way. Hello little dog, how are you doing? Right, I'm going to go back down the beach a bit now, because this next bit is towering and overhanging and craggy and crumbly. And like I say, it's all about risk appetite. So there's quite a lot of pyrite pieces here. This is a piece of pyrite, but it's just a shapeless nodule. It sounds like an insult, doesn't it, you shapeless nodule? But again, when you see lots of pyrite pieces like this, it's worth having a scout around just to see if one of them might be an ammonite in pyrite. Can't see anything. Used to come here when the kids were small, and we used to find them by the 100. So I don't know if that's just because we were particularly lucky when we came, or whether that this beach is more picked over these days, or whether it's just that there happened to be a particularly rich deposit weathering out at that particular time. The black sand here is also iron pyrite. This is not the same black sand that you get when you're gold panning. I don't think there's gold in these here hills. There's a particularly sparkly bit of iron pyrite though, look at that. It won't stay that way. These aren't the kind of pyrite crystals that retain their sparkle. However, just the sheer amount of pyrite here makes me want to look around this spot a bit more, see what I can find. Here's a rather nice piece of waxy chalcedony. So we can hold that up to the light, you can just see there's a kind of buttery, toffee coloured translucency to it. That might be quite pretty if it's tumbled, but well, I'm not bending down to pick that up again. Well, I thought we might find a bit more than this. But never mind, it's a lovely day. apart from the stiff breeze. There's another one of those mermaid's purses, same species I would say. So that's very freshly fallen there, that pile of rock and clay and mud that's come out. This bit of cliff here is actively in the business of falling down. We'll have a little look under this bit again here, because there's a bit we can get close to without being underneath toweringly overhanging cliffs. Like there might have been a water course of some sort that's actually loosened things up there and caused all of this pile of stuff to fall down. And again, lots of pyrite in the eroded stuff that's come out. Can't really see anything interesting poking out of this mud here, but this is the sort of place you might find it. Jenny's found a handful of stuff. Let's go and have a look and see what Jenny's got. Oh, that's quite nice. Yeah. That's it. Oh, yeah. So that's a pyritized ammonite, and you can see it's lost a little bit of its definition from the way the pyrite crystals have grown, but you can still see the shape of the thing. Nice one. That's the best find of the day. Oh, here's an interesting rock. Oh, okay, there's an interesting rock for you.
Oh, hang on.
Yes, what I was just going to look at. So there's a piece that's got various bits of ammonite embedded in it. I imagine with careful preparation you could probably expose some more intact specimens out of that. I'm not sure that I'm going to do that today though, but that's quite a nice piece. I'm not taking it home because, like I say, I'm not in the business of carting great boulders home unless they're really, really promising. But there we go. That's a piece that's got some ammonites visible in it, and they've kind of eroded away. So with careful preparation, with like a vibratory tool or a fine sandblaster, you could probably dig away the sedimentary rock and expose some nicer ammonites inside of there. But we'll leave that for somebody else to do. This is interesting while we're here as well. So this is again a piece of Lime Bay agate, or at least rock containing Lime Bay agate seams. Nice stripes and stuff in there. I think probably if that was cut up and tumbled, that might look quite nice, but not taking big boulders home. Just look at all of these pieces of pyrite here. Now they're collected together here for one of several possible reasons. One is that they all weathered out of the same formation, but the other is that some just detail of the local landscape and the elements have conspired to collect these pieces of pyrite that are all the same density together into this place. So there's a tiny piece of sea glass there actually. Don't think it's worth taking that home. So these could have been collected together by the waves and stuff, or they could have just all weathered out of the same formation. But because this is pyrite, and pyritized ammonites are what we're looking for today, we'll give this a little bit more scrutiny than the beach in general. I can't see anything. Okay, onward. Jenny's way ahead of me along the beach there. Our plan is to get to that little headland there where actually there's a cliff fall that goes right across the beach, and then we'll turn around and come back before the tide comes back in and covers this beach up entirely. The tide is rising now, so we do need to be a little bit mindful of that, because normally I try to time it so that my outbound leg happens all on the falling tide, but we have been dawdling a little bit, and so we're a little bit behind schedule, but we'll be fine. The tide doesn't actually come in significantly for more than an hour from now, so I think we're good. So I think now, judging by the absence of footprints, we are now at the bit of beach where we're the first people to have walked along here since the last low tide. So whether that means we'll find something, who knows. I'm going to head down this way a bit closer to the water, I think. There's another nice, very nicely worn piece of sea glass. That's coming home with me. We might have a look in these little slumps here. So you can see this gravel that's embedded in the mud here, that's not coming out of the mud, that's going in. So the waves have been all the way up here and beaten that gravel into the clay, which is a salutary lesson for us not to stay around here not to stick around here for too long today. Ah, there's the orange. There's always an orange. Ooh, not so easy to walk on this loose stuff here. So I think if we went very much further along here, we'd be round the corner and into that little bay that's on the end of Golden Cap that we've went to on the Seatown and Beyond video. So we've almost joined up. It would be actually interesting, and I might do it at some point, to just colour in the bits of coast that we've actually walked on the Jurassic coast here, because in various different videos we've almost walked the entire coast from Lyme Regis to Portland, with a few exceptions. So haven't done the bit from Hythe to Abbotsbury, or not from Burton Bradstock to Abbotsbury. I haven't walked all of that one yet, but at some point in the future we might. So we were overtaken by a couple of people who are on a mission and I don't know that we're actually going to get to the bit underneath Golden Cap there before the tide turns enough to make us want to come back, really. The wind's dropped a little bit, so it's much more pleasant here on the beach now. Possible piece of fossilised wood there. We'll just go and have a look down in these sedimentary layers here that are exposed, see if there's anything interesting, you know, an ammonite pavement type of thing perhaps. really seeing any fossils in situ on this lot. There's another boulder field here, though. Actually, we might have a little rummage in amongst those boulders, and I think that could be our turning point. We'll probably sit and have our lunch and then turn around and head back up the beach before the tide gets ahead of us. In particular, there is a bit of the beach that's quite narrow along there, so we just need to make sure we're the other side of that before the tide comes in. And again, all these little holes are from boring piddocks. Now, here's a piece of worn ammonite. We find a lot of these on the Seatown beach. You can just about still see the segmentation there, or the chambers. I don't think that's worth taking home, really. We've got quite a lot of that. And there's a very worn belemnite. And again, don't think that's worth taking home because we've got quite a few of those as well. That thing. Yeah, it's another piece. I don't know what that is actually. It might just be a piece of stone. We'll have a little wander along here though, because we are finding things. But I think we're probably not going to make it all the way to Golden Cap before we turn around. Just got to keep an eye on the tide, make sure we've got a passage back to the beach. But we'll have a wander along here, see what we might find on this stretch. So literally just turning off the camera and I found this, and you can see there the outline. It's a very worn ammonite in there. Again, a little bit of careful removal of that sedimentary rock there might expose some nice fossil underneath. I'm going to put that one in my pocket because I might take that home. No, you can't have it. You can have it just a regular rock. But we're finding more things at this end of the beach, so I perhaps won't turn around just yet. Another few little bits here, another very worn belemnite. And an ammonite inside of this rock here with little sparkly quartz crystals. There's possibly another ammonite there actually. So we are finding more stuff at this end of the beach. Not taking that home. So I was thinking about turning round, but I think we'll just carry on for a little bit longer because this part of the beach does seem to be treating us to a few little things. I'll have a look down here where it's a bit more worn out. See if we can find anything interesting down here. Different kind of fossils at this end of the beach, so less of the pyritized fossils and more of the calcified, so calcite maybe, quartzite type of fossils. And that's all just dependent on the conditions in which they were laid down and the processes that have happened to them over the millennia since that occurred. Well, I hope you're enjoying joining us anyway on this ramble along a very nice quiet beach on a wonderful spring day, even though we're not actually finding very many fossils. As you can hear, Eva's having fun. Wolfing at rocks. Kind of her thing. So in case you're wondering why I'm not just taking home every single rock that contains little bits of fossil in it that I find, that's how far it is to the car. It's about a couple of miles now probably to the car, and so I don't really want to be in the business of carting my own body weight of rocks back along the beach. Right, you go and chase a rock. We will get rid of that though. There's a bit of fishing line. I'll just take all of the twigs and whatnot off of that and we'll put that in the bin. Well, actual little waterfall here. Unfortunately complete with a collection of plastic waste there, and goodness knows what this is. Maybe a fender or something from a ferry. Looks like a fender. Yeah, so that would have been hanging down off of the side of perhaps a ferry, or maybe on the quayside, just to cushion the boats from scraping against the harbour side. Most likely attached to a boat, given that it's here and it's no longer attached to a boat. It's a shame we don't really have much carrying capacity for picking up waste. Oh, a lost glove. I used to collect photographs of lost gloves, not anymore. Well, I think this could be as far as we go. I think we might stop for a bite to eat and then turn around. Right, so I think that's actually as close as we're going to get to this end of the beach on today's trip. I've been keeping an eye on a couple of rocks that are sticking out of the water down there, just this side of that collection of rocks. And I can see the water starting to cover them up now, so that means the tide is turning. So should we. So we will head back now. This part of the beach here, I don't think the tide probably comes all the way up to the cliffs except at very high tides, but this part in the middle here, it does. So we don't want to find ourselves on this end of the beach when the tide's fully in. I just found a rather beautiful but very small piece of chalcedony. Look at that. Very nice. Too small to take home and tumble, but beautiful colour and a little bit of translucency. Quite tough on the ankles, this bit of beach, even with walking boots on. I'm just finding the large pebbles, cobbles, a little bit punishing on the feet. I think I can only imagine what it must be like for Eva with her bare feet. There is also this pattern of ridges. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. It's like a undulating wave going all the way along the beach here. So not only are you walking on large uneven cobbles, but we're also going up and down. You know, every now and again the angle of the beach changes. So here's something interesting. This is the inside of a fossil, no doubt. This is probably a piece of ammonite or something, but it's all crystallized inside. Sparkly. I think they call those druzy crystals. You can see all the way through. Not very recognizable, whatever that is, but it has very defined edges, which makes me think that probably is a section of what was a large ammonite. Well, with a little face on it. Surprised face. Yeah, there's another one of those rocks with a hollow and all the sparkly crystals. Small amount of that sparkly stuff, especially on the outside, would probably just be salt, but inside there it's quartz or calcite. A little bit easier to walk on here. Nice bit of green sea glass there from a wine bottle, most likely. So wind's picked up again and it's really driving the waves now, and the tide is coming back in. So yeah, with the breeze driving the sea, we're actually getting to a narrow bit of the beach here where, you know, if we weren't too careful, we could get cut off. So actually the people still walking in that direction, well, I assume they know what they're doing. That's almost certainly a big piece of the edge of an ammonite, so those would be the kind of bits that stick out from the ridges. Yeah, the day has changed quite a bit now. Alongside the cliffs here, it's actually quite a wind blowing. Not all that pleasant. Anyway, I think we'll head off to Studio Shrimp now to have a look at today's finds.
Okay, well, here are the finds of the day. Not a lot to be coming home with, but it was a nice walk anyway. This is probably the best find. This is Jenny's pyritized ammonite. It is a little bit kind of bloomy. It's where the pyrite crystals have grown and obscured the shape of the fossil. On this side, actually, it's still quite well defined. That's probably the best find of the day. That's my best find, which is an ammonite still embedded in a piece of limestone. And as I say, if we did some careful digging away, we might well reveal some quite nice detail there. I don't know whether I will though. A big old piece of belemnite, quite a chunky one. A section of pyritized ammonite, which is a really nice piece actually, but it would have been better if we'd been there however much earlier it was necessary to actually get the whole thing. So that whole ammonite, it must have been about that big when it was weathered out, at least to this big. It could have been bigger still, but yeah, I would say probably about that big when it was whole. Shame we couldn't get there for that. And then these pieces of sea glass. Lots of little pieces of sea glass, including one little interesting piece. This one is white and green, So that indicates that that has been melted. So that's been a couple of different bottles or pieces of glass that have been melted together, and some of the green from a piece like this has flowed into the white from a piece like this. So either bottles in a beach fire that melted together and then this little piece has broken off and weathered out, or bottles in a dump, because it was quite common practice to set fire to landfill dumps in days gone by just to reduce their size, and sometimes, given the nature of stuff that people were dumping on those landfills, they would catch fire on their own anyway. Anyway, so that's the finds. Oh, plus this piece of fishing line, which I meant to throw this in the bin at the beach actually, but I forgot. So this came home in my pocket. I'm just wondering, if I collected up enough of this, I wonder if we could kind of knit it into a shopping bag or something. A shopping bag out of recycled fishing line. Maybe I'll put that in a little jar somewhere and we'll keep it, because I do find a fair bit of this when we go beachcombing. So maybe that's a potential craft project, and it would be a very durable bag, wouldn't it, if we managed to collect enough to do that. Anyway, that's today's finds. These pieces of sea glass are going to go in our little pot on the windowsill. Those fossils will, I don't know what Jenny will want to do with this. She might want to keep that separate because it's a nice find. Anyway, back to beach shrimp.
Another little detail just to appreciate here for a moment before we move on. The pattern of little rivulets on the sand made by the receding water when the tide was going out, and possibly water seeping out of the cliff face up there. But it's created this intricate pattern of tiny rivulets. Jenny's way ahead of me now, so I've got to catch up. So thanks for joining us today on this walk on Charmouth Beach. Not particularly productive for fossils, and my gosh, this wind is exhausting, but it's been a nice day out. I hope you've enjoyed that. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.